Imagine, if you will, sitting in a pitch-black room. The doors are locked from the outside. The windows are heavily barred.
Oh, that is a terrifying thought to start with.
Right. And you know exactly what kind of people hold the keys. You know they view you as nothing more than, well, currency.
Just a transaction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In that total suffocating darkness, what happens to your mind? Does it shatter? Does it slowly quiet down and, accept the shadows as your new permanent
Or
reality?
does it fight back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does it take that darkness, compress it, and weaponize it into an unbreakable resolve to see the sun again? Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone.
We have a really fascinating stack of listener-provided notes and sources today. We're dissecting a gripping piece of historical fiction.
We are. It's an excerpt from Chasing Death, episode 46, called The Auction Block. And our mission today isn't just to recount a story for you.
No, definitely not. We are going to look right past the fiction.
Right, to extract the very real psychology of resilience, the architecture of oppressive systems, and really, the profound mechanics of human survival hidden within its pages.
It really is a dense, layered piece of source material. We are looking at a narrative that operates on multiple levels simultaneously.
For sure.
On the surface, it's a harrowing adventure, but underneath, it is a masterclass in the psychology of captivity.
Exactly. And to ground us before we get into the heavy psychology, let's establish what we're actually analyzing here.
Get the scene for us.
So, our inciting incident centers on a woman named Asha. According to the text, she's been violently torn from her parents in her homeland of Mohenjo-Daro.
That's the ancient Indus Valley, right?
Yeah, exactly. She's separated from her husband, Zayn, and dragged by desert bandits all the way across northern Africa to be sold.
Just an unimaginable journey.
Truly. She's sold to this notorious slave trader named Kashem in the city of Yarmouk. Now, right off the bat, looking at these notes, the geography here feels almost, mythic.
It does feel very expansive.
Yeah, because Mohenjo-Daro is the Indus Valley,
Yeah.
Yarmouk is the Levant, and they cross northern Africa. It feels incredibly sprawling, almost anachronistic.
What's fascinating here is that the author seems to be making a very deliberate choice with that sprawling geography.
How so?
Well, this isn't just a literal map, it's a thematic one. By stretching Ash's journey across the entirety of the known ancient world, the narrative establishes the sheer scale of this.
The scale of the trade network, you mean?
Right, the cold, bureaucratic indifference of this massive human trade network. It creates a feeling of absolute inescapability for the reader.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, you can't just run away because the system is everywhere.
Exactly. And Kachem's vast wealth is materialized in this high-walled mansion just beyond the city limits of Yarmouk. It's an imposing fortress of stone and luxury.
But the text contrasts that massive, globalized machine of exploitation with the intensely intimate, absolute heartbreak of the individual women trapped inside those walls.
It really zooms in on the human cost.
It does. Which brings us to the holding quarters in Kashem's mansion. The notes describe Asha being thrust into this room full of broken spirits.
A room full of women who have just lost everything.
Yeah. And there's one woman who really stands out, a Portuguese captive. This woman tells Asha how she watched her own family slaughtered right in front of her.
God, that is awful.
It's horrific.
Yeah.
But what really caught my attention was her advice. She essentially preaches total, absolute resignation to Asha.
She tells her to just give up.
Basically, yeah. She tells her that this is the immutable decree of the gods, and they just have to accept what the heavens have willed.
Wait, so her defense mechanism against this horrific trauma is just giving up?
It is a devastating but actually an incredibly common psychological defense mechanism.
Yeah, just surrendering.
Yeah. When trauma is that absolute and the environment provides zero avenues for physical escape, the human brain has to find a way to survive the waking hours.
Because fighting it constantly would just burn you out. Exactly. If you constantly fight an unwinnable battle in your mind, the cognitive dissonance will literally destroy you. So the mind alters its reality.
It reframes the situation.
Right. It decides that submission is actually a form of spiritual patience.
Oh, wow. It's almost like, what is that concept? Learned helplessness. Like that old story about the elephant tied to a tiny wooden peg.
Precisely. The psychology of learned helplessness is exactly what's at play here.
Right, because when the elephant is a baby, it pulls and pulls but can't break the rope. So its brain just wires itself to believe struggle is fundamentally futile.
It learns that trying is pointless.
Yeah, and by the time it's a massive adult, capable of ripping a tree right out of the ground, a tiny rope and a wooden peg are enough to hold it in place.
Because the walls aren't physical anymore, they're mental.
That is so dark, but it perfectly explains the Portuguese woman.
That is exactly what has happened to the women in Kashem's mansion. They have settled into a quiet, sorrowful patience because fighting back internally is simply too agonizing.
Especially when external escape seems literally impossible.
Exactly. But this is where the narrative makes its sharpest pivot. Asha violently diverges from the group.
She refuses to play along.
She completely rejects this resignation. The text explicitly notes that her faith in her ancient pantheon of gods actually dissolved under the weight of her suffering.
Which is understandable.
Totally. But she doesn't stop believing. Instead, she anchors her soul entirely to a singular, all-powerful deity she calls the Supreme Lord of Zayn.
I have to push back on that a little bit, though.
Okay, go for it.
If she just swaps out her old gods for new Supreme Lord, isn't she just making up a different coping mechanism? How is her faith any different from the Portuguese woman's resignation to the heavens?
That is a really fair point, but it's a crucial distinction. The Portuguese woman uses the heavens to justify her surrender.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, whereas Asha uses her Supreme Lord to justify her defiance.
That's a massive difference in how the belief is applied.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that Asha's specific framing of faith acts as a literal psychological shield.
So it's protecting her mind.
Right. While the other women accept the cruel script of fate, giving up their autonomy, Asha's internal conviction that she will be delivered back to Mohenjo-Daro gives her what psychologists call an internal locus of control.
Okay, an internal locus of control. Meaning, she believes she still has agency over her ultimate destiny, even if she doesn't control her immediate physical environment.
Exactly. And that is incredibly relevant for anyone listening today.
How so?
Well, if you've ever felt trapped in an impossible situation, maybe a toxic corporate hierarchy, a manipulative relationship, or just a system that actively works against you,
Which I'm sure we all have at some point.
right, then you know that the hardest thing to protect isn't your physical position, it's your sense of self.
Keeping your identity intact.
Asha maintains her internal locus of control. The physical chains are on her wrists, but she denies her captors any access to her spirit.
That internal real estate is the one thing Kashem's wealth cannot buy.
Beautifully put.
But, I mean, how does that internal resolve hold up when humanity is literally quantified into a dollar amount?
The transition in the story is brutal here.
It really is.
Yeah.
Because the text shifts from this private internal captivity to a very public auction. Kashem suddenly orders all the women to be painted and dressed in fine silks.
Preparing them for market.
Yeah, and Asha is purchased by foreign traders and dragged across the desert to a massive, centralized slave market in Egypt.
Egypt is depicted as this sprawling, relentless hub where agents of the wealthiest nobility travel immense distances to buy human beings.
And before the market even opens, the traders lock Asha in a high-walled house to keep her, quote-unquote, pristine.
It's just sickening.
And they assign this old woman to attend to her, whose primary job seems to be psychological conditioning.
Right, to break her down before the auction.
Yeah, the old woman tells Asha this horrifying ghost story. She warns her about a concubine who recently tried to escape.
And what happened to her?
The traders hunted the girl down, slaughtered her, and buried her lifeless body right beneath the paving stones of the very courtyard Asha is looking at.
Wow. It is a textbook tactic of systemic oppression.
Enforcing compliance through sheer terror.
Precisely. But again, we see Asha's psychological armor hold firm.
She doesn't break.
No. The text notes that the paralyzing terror of bloodshed recedes, replaced by an unyielding spiritual fortitude. She refuses to let the terror take root.
Which leads us directly to the auction block. And this part of the source material really confused me.
What part?
So Asha is placed on this lavishly decorated wooden platform. The auctioneer starts pitching her to this chaotic sea of buyers like she's a flawless luxury product.
Right, listing all her qualities.
Yeah, he highlights her noble lineage, her flawless virtue, her regal dignity. But wait, isn't that a massive paradox?
In what way?
Why does her defiance, her unbroken spirit, make her more valuable to these slavers? Shouldn't they want someone who is already broken and compliant?
It's a horrific irony, but it exposes the darkest truth about the commodification of humanity.
Which is?
These incredibly wealthy patrons aren't just buying labor, they are buying the ultimate status symbol.
Oh, it's an ego thing.
Completely. Owning someone who has been broken by trauma is one thing, but purchasing the dignity of a woman who looks and acts like an unbroken queen, That feeds the ultimate ego of the oppressor.
They want to buy her precisely because her spirit is intact.
So they can be the ones to own it, to break it themselves.
That is just chilling. And that brings us to the climax of the Egyptian market, the arrival of the Abyssinian prince.
This character is so well drawn in the text.
The notes paint an incredibly vivid picture of this guy. He's physically imposing, one of his eyes is entirely blind and clouded over, and he is just dripping in breathtaking diamonds.
He reeks of staggering foreign wealth.
Yeah, and he shatters the entire bidding process with absolute arrogance.
He didn't even play the game.
No. A bidding war skyrockets between him and a rival prince, finally grinding to a halt at a staggering 120,000 rials.
Which they clarify are gold pieces.
Right. He buys her through sheer financial brute force. So Asha is strapped to a camel and endures a grueling 6-day journey to the metropolis of Antioch.
The contrast the author sets up here is really striking.
Oh, entirely. The prince brings her to this breathtakingly beautiful small palace. There's a magnificent stone pool, vibrant red and blue sunlight darting in the water.
It sounds idyllic.
It's objectively beautiful, but the text makes it clear. For Asha, this is a gilded cage. And we see the monstrous nature of her captor during their first luncheon together.
Yes. The sensory details of that meal are incredibly revealing from an analytical standpoint.
Right, because he completely drops any pretense of royal dignity. The notes describe him throwing himself at the food like a wild animal.
Tearing at it.
Tearing at the meat, with torrents of thick gravy smearing across his fingers and chin. It's pure, primitive ferocity.
And what does he do?
He just stretches out on the floor and falls into a thunderous sleep.
That grotesque display of consumption is highly symbolic. He consumes his food the exact same way he consumes human lives.
With a ravenous, thoughtless entitlement.
Exactly, gluttonous entitlement. But it's what happens when he wakes up that changes the entire trajectory of the narrative.
Yeah, he wakes up, locks his solitary eye on her, and drops a massive bombshell.
The marriage proposal.
Well, announcement, really. He announces that he isn't just keeping her as a concubine. On the first day of the coming month, the new moon, he is going to elevate her to be his lawful wife.
And the notes indicate that this is the moment Asha decides she has to escape.
Right, but I don't fully get this.
Why not?
To an outside observer, being elevated from a slave to the lawful wife of a vastly wealthy prince sounds like, well, a survival victory. It's a stabilization of power. Why on earth is this the moment she decides to risk her life to flee?
It's a brilliant question, and it goes right back to that internal locus of control we discussed earlier.
The psychological armor?
Yes. You have to look at it through Asha's psychological framework. Her entire internal identity is wrapped up in being the sacred, unbroken trust of her departed husband, Zayn.
Right, she belongs to him spiritually.
As long as she's a captive, a slave, it is a physical condition imposed upon her by external force. Her soul remains her own.
Because slavery is done to her.
Precisely. But marriage. Marriage implies a social, legal, and spiritual contract.
It implies consent.
It requires her to take on the identity of the oppressor's partner. For Asha, this elevation is actually the ultimate violation.
Because it threatens to overwrite her internal reality.
Exactly. The threat of forced marriage acts as the catalyst that transforms her passive, defensive faith into an active, desperate, and highly tactical resolve to escape.
That makes so much sense. She realizes she can't just pray and wait anymore because the new moon is coming and the system is about to force her into psychological subjugation, not just physical.
So she has to act.
But she doesn't go after the guards. It's almost like she's not trying to bash the front door down. She's looking for a flaw in the code.
Like a hacker.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hacker bypassing a firewall by finding a forgotten back door.
Yeah.
She targets the household's social dynamics instead, right?
That is a perfect analogy. You don't attack a fortified system where it is strongest. You attack it where it is inherently vulnerable.
The weak link.
Asha listens to the whispered conversations of the staff and zeroes in on a woman named Soraya, an elegant but sorrowful middle-aged concubine.
And Asha discovers the back door.
Yes. Soraya used to be the prince's adored, wedded wife.
But he threw her away.
Exactly. Years ago, when Soraya was young, the prince showered her with devotion. But as she aged, he simply discarded her.
He stripped her of her status.
And callously demoted her back to the rank of a common household slave. The psychological brilliance of Asha's strategy here cannot be overstated.
It's a masterclass in manipulation, but driven by pure survival. The notes describe Asha waiting for a quiet evening, drawing Soraya into a secluded corner, and deliberately allowing herself to cry.
Playing on Soraya's empathy.
Yeah, and when Soraya asks why she's weeping, instead of celebrating her upcoming royal marriage, Asha asks her a highly calculated question.
What does she say?
She says, "If your own husband were still alive, could you ever bring yourself to share the bed of another man?"
That specific framing is genius.
Right.
She doesn't ask Soraya for pity. She aligns their grief. By bringing up the sanctity of a true husband, she forces Soraya to remember her own past
Her own lost dignity.
and the profound injustice of her demotion.
Yeah, it works perfectly. Soraya fiercely responds, "Never." And that is when Asha drops the hammer. She says, "Then look upon me and understand the magnitude of the sorrow crushing my chest."
The mask completely slips from Soraya.
It does. She unleashes this venomous hatred for the one-eyed prince, saying his wretched nature is a constant cycle of chasing new brides and trampling the old ones.
She admits that if she had the power, she would exact a vengeance he would feel for the rest of his life.
And this is the pivot.
Asha realizes that Soraya doesn't just want to help a fellow woman out of the goodness of her heart. Soraya wants to destroy the prince.
So Asha offers her the ultimate weapon.
She whispers, "Help me escape. Deliver me from his clutches, and the prince will find himself crushed beneath the weight of your perfect revenge."
She completely reframes her own desperate flight. By helping Asha escape, Soraya isn't just freeing a slave.
No, she is actively robbing this monster of his most prized 120,000 rial possession right before his grand wedding day.
It's incredibly poetic.
It is incredibly potent, and Soraya's entire demeanor shifts. The text notes a sudden light kindling in her eyes. She agrees instantly.
But she also brings the harsh reality of logistics to the table. Asha's homeland is a month's travel away. A lone female runaway cannot survive that journey.
But Asha's faith holds the line. She tells Soraya, "Just get me past these gates. My Supreme Lord will provide."
Moved by that unshakable faith, Soraya becomes a shadow in the estate. She uses her own network of informants in the city to scour the markets.
Looking for a commercial caravan heading east?
And the author masterfully ramps up the tension here. The new moon is drawing dangerously close.
The Abyssinian prince is frenetically preparing for this lavish wedding, entirely oblivious to the conspiracy blooming right under his own roof.
Just 2 days before the wedding, as the sun goes down, Soraya finally slips into Asha's chamber. She's found a massive trade caravan leaving at dawn, and she's already paid Asha's passage in full.
But there is a massive catch.
Yes, Soraya tells her, "To survive this journey, you cannot travel as yourself."
She has registered Asha under a male alias.
The Arab merchant Al-Harith. From the moment she steps out of the palace, she must completely adopt this male persona.
Which Asha doesn't even blink at. She says she would walk through fire and wear any disguise to see her family again.
Soraya promises to return at midnight with the garments, leaving Asha alone in the dark to wait.
The waiting is the hardest part.
The notes paint this waiting period so vividly. She's lying rigid on her bed, her heart like at a chaotic battlefield between ecstasy and cold, paralyzing dread.
Because she knows the stakes.
Exactly. If she's caught, the prince will execute both her and Soraya on the spot.
It is a profound test of that internal locus of control we talked about. The hours crawl by, half the night is gone in total silence.
Then, a faint scratching. Asha eases the bolt open, and Soraya slips through like a ghost, carrying a heavy bundle of traditional male Arabic robes.
She tells Asha to change immediately, that horses are waiting in the shadows outside the walls.
Leaving the terrifying but known confines of that gilded cage to step into the absolute unknown darkness as Al-Harith the merchant. I mean, it requires a level of courage that is almost hard to fathom.
It really is incredible.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, when we synthesize all these elements, the learned helplessness, the commodification of dignity, the hacking of social dynamics, what is the core takeaway for you?
I think the core takeaway is the mechanics of Asha's survival. She managed an incredibly difficult balancing act.
How so?
On the inside, her core identity, her loyalty to her past, her psychological armor, well, it never bent.
Right.
But on the outside, she was entirely fluid and adaptable. She used her captor's social hierarchy against him, and she willingly discarded her external identity as a noble woman to adopt the disguise of a male merchant.
She survived because she refused to let external oppression rewrite her internal reality.
Exactly. She adapted without breaking.
It really makes you wonder about the very nature of oppressive systems, doesn't it?
It really does.
If you think about it, the prince's absolute arrogance blinded him completely. He had no idea that his own past cruelty, discarding and demoting Soraya, created the exact vulnerability that brought him down.
He planted the seeds of his own downfall.
Exactly. It leaves you with this lingering thought to chew on long after we sign off today. When a system or a person builds their power entirely on exploitation and the casual destruction of others, are they fundamentally destined to forge the very keys to their own destruction?
A powerful and necessary question to ask in ancient history and today.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us in the dark today and for taking this deep dive with us. Keep questioning the systems around you. Keep looking for the back doors. And remember, even in the pitch black, the mind can always build a way out. Until next time.